from a design standpoint, is it more about the speed with which this can be built? Is it about the finishes? Is it about everything? Kind of how do you think about the product side of Shortstack as compared to, I don't know, let's say kind of like a traditional multifamily project that's 400 units that gets built somewhere near downtown kind of thing?
I can jump in on this. I think I'll kind of go back and ground us in that missing middle scale that Anna started out describing, because the zoning that we're really focused on here, at least for our first launch, are these kind of small scale sites, let's say 5,000 to 15,000 square feet sites that allow for 3 or 4 story buildings. And there are a lot of properties available that fit that description, because these have historically been kind of hard to develop and the zoning and density wasn't quite there. Now that we have the zoning and density, that's great. But as I mentioned, it's still super inefficient to develop a project that big on like a custom kind of boutique one-off scale. You're just going to spend a lot on architecture and engineering and entitlements. Whereas with the Shortstack model, we spent quite a bit of time kind of developing this base design that we're looking at, such that it can be deployed across multiple sites like super efficiently. But as you mentioned, Chris, we didn't want it to look like a cookie cutter box. And I think it's worth mentioning that we've used the term module a couple times to describe the unit types that we're stacking and configuring for Shortstack. But we aren't building these as a volumetric modular construction effort. And that is certainly an important, part of our industry that I know a lot of folks are focused on, even with mass timber. And I think there's a lot of room to improve our construction technology through modular construction. But we've focused this Shortstack product on more of like a flat pack panelized construction approach, which we think is more efficient for these urban infill sites, where we're not building 50 boxes here or 50 units at a time, right? We've got these kind of smaller scale projects, so we don't want to have to pay for the craning and the trucking associated with these volumetric modular construction sites. So we've got this kind of flat pack panelized approach, which allows us, I think, to have a little more fun with the design, because we're not completely constrained by that trucking modular volume. And so we've designed, the team at Works Progress Architecture, WPA, I think has done a fantastic job of establishing sort of in plan, you would see it as like a pinwheel, where we have multiple small buildings that circulate around an interior courtyard that's open to the sky. And so that really, is driving some of those design rules I talked about in terms of access to daylight, natural ventilation. It also it creates an opportunity for some outdoor communal space in the middle, where you would typically, if you were taking a look at this kind of site and you're saying, how can I maximize FAR? How can I maximize developable area? You would build a box and you would have a door into that box with a lobby and a hallway and a double loaded corridor. This is not as efficient from a development return on equity standpoint per square foot, but we get there, we find those efficiencies in the replicability that we're talking about. And we think that it's important enough to kind of blow open these small projects such that we have a lot of daylight to the units, and that these are different types of units than you would typically see in a double loaded corridor apartment building. And again, on that missing middle topic, a lot of the sites that we're looking at and the zones that we're looking at truly straddle these zones of like what have traditionally been single family home lots, which are adjacent to both of our Shortstack sites, and then kind of taller buildings on a commercial corridor, which are also adjacent to our Shortstack sites. So these become the bridge between those two building typologies. And we think that it's a good example of how you don't necessarily have to max out density to create enough units that you have an efficient development process.